Yes, he is. Okay, let us begin. Okay, last week um, we discussed at length the history, the history of Kabbalah and where it started, began its controversies, mostly around the fact that there's so much unknown about Kabbalah, and it's so deep and mystical that it gets so confusing. The topics are so hard to understand that most people didn't study it and weren't, we said, allowed to study it because of the confusion that can come from studying Kabbalah. So we said that for many years, no one really studied Kabbalah. There was, some great rabbis who authored books in Kabbalah, but those books we said were put away. They weren't public until eventually Kabbalah became much more widely studied due to the fact that many more rabbis were writing, Jewish Kabbalists were authoring books on it and explaining it and elaborating it and making it more relevant. So people started to study Kabbalah more. Today, we're going to go into a little bit of what exactly Kabbalah is. In other words, we're going to go into the mechanics of Kabbalah. Now, what is Kabbalah? So, Kabbalah is basically going in to how God created the world and how God created us. What happened? How did it work? What was the schedule? What was the map of it? What exactly happened? We know God is an infinite being. He's this huge thing that existed prior to the world was created. It was the only existence around. There's nothing else besides God. There wasn't even a concept called existence because it was just God and that's it. In order for there to be something to exist outside of God, God had to create that. God had to create, think about it. God thought, I would like that there should be an existence outside of me, something that is separate from me. Okay, so that's how it started. It started with a thought. God thinking, I would like that there should be something outside of me. What exactly that is, we can discuss. That thought itself created the being of the world. What does that mean? When we think about something, when we want to build a house, so first we have a thought, I want to build a house. Then you have a thought, how do you want the house to look, the details of the house, and then you actually do may build a house. By God, it doesn't work like that. There is no stages. There's no stages. First, God thinks that He wants a world, then God decides how the world should look, then God decides all the details, and then God creates it. It just happens. But that happening from nothing to something, from godliness and spirituality to physicality, Kabbalah discusses that shift. That what is there's an in between, there has to be an in between there. By God, it's a split second. But by Kabbalah, dissects and goes into what happened in that split second. Very deep, very vast, and very nuanced. And it's an entire map. So you see on our first pages that we have, so many of the Kabbalists, um, right on the top on the front page, is like this picture of of what looks like this, what's on the screen over here. Okay, so some Kabbalists they have created this diagram of how it looks when God created the world. This is basically drawing. These Kabbalists drew in they were in the 1500s. They drew what did that split second look like? Obviously, it's not a real map, a physical map, it's all spiritual. And we're going to go into exactly what those little circles are. We're going to discuss them and what it is in detail. But that is what Kabbalah is, these diagrams. Kabbalah tries to elaborate what these things are. Very hard to explain in the lingo and in the words that we use in our day-to-day life. Kabbalah works very hard to try to do that. This diagram is just him trying to explain in a pen of how it looks. Obviously, there's no such thing as a higher and lower in spirituality. One thing, there's no floors. It's like saying a boss is higher than the secretary. What does it mean he's higher? Does it mean that he's taller? Is he on a higher floor? The secretary and the boss could be both sitting on the same floor and in the same room, but you'll say that the boss is higher than the secretary. It just means that he's higher in stature, he's higher in position. And godliness works and in spirituality works the same way. There isn't like this space, like there's this and then there's this and there's this. It's all one thing. It's just that there's some things that are more holy, more connected to God, and more not. What is the purpose of the study of Kabbalah? Why do we study it? What is the reason for the study of Kabbalah, besides its intrigue and its popularity in the world? So in Judaism, we say that there's two general reasons and two general explanations of why we study Kabbalah. Number one, it's a mitzvah. It's a commandment in the Torah that God tells us, and Moses tells us, that we should know who and what God is. The way we know who and what God is through studying Kabbalah. So when you're studying Kabbalah, you're doing a good deed. You're studying the Torah. You're connecting to God, and this is exactly how God wants it. But there's a deeper reason. A doctor, when he wants to treat someone, what does he do? He goes to school and he learns how the mechanics of the body works. Through a doctor excelling in the mechanics of the body and the DNA and how the blood cells work and how the liver works and how the heart works, he's able to determine what a cure for a certain person should be, or what sickness does this person have. Kabbalah is like the DNA of the world. Kabbalah is the behind the scenes. It's like a computer programmer, someone who codes, makes a website. So what do we see on the outside? We see the interface, we see the website, but behind the website, there's tons of code. There's tons of things going on there that the coder knows and understands. And the more he knows, the more he's able to build a website. And the more a person knows how websites work, the more he's able to navigate the website. A good example of this would be an example, Salesforce. Okay, Salesforce. What do we see? We see the outside of Salesforce, which is for us to use. But it's a very, very complicated website to use. Even on the outer end of it, even for us, there's just so many things going on. You think that you're coding the website, but the more you know how the mechanics of the website works, the more you know all the nuances of the website, the better you can navigate the website. Kabbalah is that back end of the world. It's the data center. It's the coding of the world of godliness. And when we know that code, when we know the mechanics of the world, we're able to live a better life. And something one step further. We said, and we mentioned this before, that it says in the verse that God is like our shadow. Says God is our shadow. What does that mean? That the same way when we walk over here and the moon is shining, there's a shadow on the floor. God is like that shadow following us around. What does that mean? That what we do down here has an impact up there, and then it comes back down to us when we pray for a certain thing. God answers that prayer and he sends it down here. So when knowing Kabbalah, when understanding Kabbalah, you're able to do certain things and pray certain ways and have certain thoughts and certain intentions that can have an impact on our life through knowing different meditations, through knowing which verses to say and which prayer, what to think during certain prayers. It can have an impact on us. Okay. As we were saying, Jewish mysticism is not for spiritual enlightenment as an end for itself. It's all to gain from it as to have an impact on our lives and to impact God to come back down to us. Now, there's a story of this a great Hasidic Jew. He comes to the fourth Chabad Rebbe, and as it for a private audience, they're sitting and having a conversation. And the Rebbe is asking this Chassid, tell me about your day. Tell me what you do during the day. And he says, I wake up in the morning and I meditate for an hour and then I pray for an hour. And then I eat breakfast. And before I go to work, I meditate again for an hour, think about God and think about the world and my place in the world. And I meditate how amazing God is and how great God is and all these different spiritual things. And then at night, before I go to sleep, I again meditate, think about God and all these spiritual things. And the Rebbe asks him, all day you're thinking about God. When do you think about yourself? And this chassid thought he was going to make the Rebbe, wow, what a, look at me. I'm such a meditator all day. I'm so spiritually connected. The Rebbe doesn't, the whole day you're thinking about God. What about thinking about yourself? Doesn't mean to think about yourself, when are you going to eat and when you're going to go on vacation. It means, when are you going to think about your own life? When are you going to take these spiritual concepts and apply it to yourself and have an impact on your personal life? Thinking about spirituality is amazing and good, but the purpose is down here in this world. The purpose is connections with human beings, helping others, being there for others, so on and so forth. Not to live in the clouds, not to live in meditation, but the opposite, to be down here in this world. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what we're holding over here. Okay, let's go to source number 6. Let's get into this. Now, source number 6, page over here. It says I should say on the top the pages. Okay. Text number 1. Text number 1. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah, there is. I'm just seeing if when when I put a PD thing on the screen, um, I could see that someone tries to join, but I guess we just put it back on for now. Anyhow, just like this. Okay, so like this, text number 1. One of the best ways and one of the straightforward ways that Kabbalah brings how to understand spirituality and godliness is by looking at ourselves, looking at the human being, by understanding how humans work, how our brains work, how our psyche works, which is easier for us to understand because it's something that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. When we know how we work, we will know how God works. Let's see text number 1. A mortal is a mirror for the spiritual reality. All that exists in both higher and lower realms is present in the microcosmic form within the human. This is the deeper significance of the Torah statement that the human was created in the divine image. And this is why we say, from my flesh, I envision God. Step number 1 in trying to figure out Kabbalah, trying to figure out godliness, before Kabbalah even gets in to discussing anything, it tells us what is the best way to know how God works? Is figuring out how we work. Because we are just a mirror of God. Number 1. That's text number 1. Okay? Now, let's just see. Let's see step number two. Text two, divine ladder. It says like this. God fashioned a ladder planted on the earth whose top reaches into the heavens. This ladder's rungs serve as channels through which the flow of divine energy can devolve degree after degree in a constant pattern of progressive concern caressing until the flow can be received at the lowest extreme of existence. Let me explain what this means. We are all very familiar from school, the concept of evolution. The basic underlying principle of evolution is that the longer something goes, the more it will grow and progress. Okay, it evolves. When God created the world, created it in the opposite. What is the opposite of evolution? Anybody know the word? A word I learned only when I knew about this concept, but there's a word called devolution. Anybody ever heard this word? It's basically, let me explain you exactly what it means. When God created the world, there was a big issue that faced God, a big challenge. God had a very big challenge. What was God's challenge? God is infinite. The world is finite, is limited. Small box, small world. Yeah, it's huge. But God, the creator of it, is infinite. Take, let's say, a light bulb that can only hold 10 watts. Take that light bulb and stick it into a socket where the electricity pumping into it is 500 watts. What's going to happen to the bulb? It's going to burst. It's going to pop. That was the issue that God had when he was creating the world. God is infinite, spirituality. The world which he wants to create is limited, it's physical. How is he going to come? Let's call God for a second nothing. Even though God is not nothing, God is something, but let's call God nothing for a second. How could from nothing come something? The world we're calling something now. How could from something spiritual come something physical? And this question arises even if you do not believe in any words I'm saying here today, even if you don't believe in Kabbalah. How could all of a sudden something appear? There has to be something before. How could from nothing come something? So God had to do something like this. God had to minimize himself, subtract, take away, constrain. And in Kabbalah, it explains that there was things that happened. Two things that happened. Number one, God kept on taking layers of spirituality off of him, whatever that means. One of the things with Kabbalah is that very hard to understand. What does it mean God took spirituality away? It's think about it as having a flashlight and then slowly covering the light with a piece of cardboard and the light getting smaller and smaller and smaller until there's only a thin little light coming out from this flashlight. So God had to do the same thing was number one. God is this infinite light, and he slowly had to cover up and move away and make smaller that light. That's one thing that God had to do. Another thing that God had to do is God had to change the light. What do I mean by that? Imagine a stained glass window, something that we don't really have around in Arizona too much, but if you're in New York or in Europe, very common. Stained glass windows, when you're in the room and the sun is shining through the stained glass, the light that you see is a colored light. It's a green or it's red. Either way, there's a colored light. That's another thing God had to do. There had to be some type of curtain, it says in Kabbalah, a curtain, like a curtain, that had to block the light, that the light that's coming through changes type. Now, I'm speaking about it, we're saying using light and light bulbs and flashlights, but this is how it worked in spirituality. However it looks spiritual, that's just the God bless you. That's just how it worked. And it went from level to level to level, slowly changing and slowly progressing downward, but not in a way of progressing where it was coming more and more in an evolving way, but the opposite was getting smaller and smaller and different and different and different and different until it came down here into this world. The word for this is if you see in the bottom of the page where it says key term, the word in Kabbalah is Seder Hishtalshalut, which is the system of devolution, the many degrees of systematic descent that stretch between God's desire to create the universe and the tangible result of that goal. Seder Hishtalshalut, that picture which we had over here, which was in this page over here that I have on the screen, this picture over here, that is called this thing over here. That's the name of it. That is the name of those balls. That like map. This map over here, this is called Seder Hishtalshalut. Not this. Not this specifically right now. That is also, but that I know. This one over here. Yes, over here is called Seder Hishtalshalut. It's the Kabbalistic terminology for it. Okay, so this So now coming back into the paragraph, now that we understand a little bit what it's saying, God fashioned, text two, God fashioned a ladder planted on the earth whose top reaches into the heavens. This ladder's rung serves as channels through which the flow of divine energy can devolve degree after degree in a constant pattern of progressive concerning until the flow can be received at the lowest extreme of existence. Okay. This concept of Seder Shalshos, this is the foundation of Kabbalah. This is the foundation. This is like the first step. Before you get anywhere, you have to know this concept. It's the first thing that happens. Okay, continuing along. Important disclaimer in text number 3. The saintly Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, text number 3, which is on page number 8. It says like this: the saintly Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov taught that when studying works of Kabbalah, we must be careful not to perceive the Kabbalistic ideas as literal physical concepts. Not physical concepts. It's an important disclaimer, which we're going to get back to again at the end when we discuss these Kabbalistic concepts and more relatable to just spiritual concepts. Meaning, it's not exact. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like this picture. The Kabbalist who made this picture was just trying to take these concepts and put it down as a picture, but it doesn't actually look like that. There's no spiritual realms or no spirituality that looks like that picture at all. He's just basically trying to show that there's just these different things. There's different circles, which we're going to discuss what is each circle and what they are. As he explained that in spirituality, there's no higher, there's no lower. It's all the spiritual. Okay, continuing along. We will we will discuss in text number 4. Here's where we're going to actually go into what these pictures are, what these circles are. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Let's keep this on here for a second. Let's keep this picture over here. What we are going to discuss now, we're going to call them worlds. The 3 worlds, which are called Bria, Sira, and Asiya. These are the bottom 3 circles on that picture we saw. We're going to discuss the bottom three pictures, the bottom three circles on the pictures that we saw. So let's see in text number 4 exactly what the Zohar, which the Zohar, as we see text number 4 on the side, where it says this is anyone who knows, who has heard of Kabbalah and has dabbled in it a tiny bit on Google or on YouTube will know that the most central work of Kabbalah is the Zohar. It is the most sophisticated and clear and organized work on the Kabbalistic teachings. As we said last week, that it is based on the Torah portion. It would take every verse by verse of the Torah and explain it in Kabbalistic language. He says like this, very, we're going to go through it slowly, but let's first read the English. God's glory, this is a quote from the Zohar. God's glory includes Beriah, and God bestowed this onto the human. God's glory includes Yetzirah, and God bestowed this onto the human. God's glory includes Asiya, and God bestowed this onto the human. Thus, the human is rendered in the image of the supernal glory. And this is the way Kabbalah works. It expects you to have information and knowledge of what he means when he says Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. But we're going to discuss exactly what these three spiritual words are and what they mean and what's going on over here. Okay. The word Bria, which is the top little circle over there, literally means, the literal translation of it is fashioned. Fashion, like to the starting of creation. Another book that I have on Kabbalah translates the word Bria as creation. Okay? Creation. There is finally a created being, something separate from the spiritual world, something where an area of godliness and spirituality which can feel itself as a separate existence. Yes.
Why the word resonates with the word Reshut?
Yes, that's where it comes from. Kabbalah, yes, the Kabbalah took that word from the verse in the Torah. Yeah. Yeah. So Bria literally means the world of creation. Okay. Next is the world, the second circle, that I guess the middle one or the second one, the world of Yetzirah, means made, to make something. Over here, he writes it in this book that I have over here, formed. There's a formation, it's formed, a formed reality. The physicality gradually materializes. Okay? Next word is Asiya. The next word is Asiya, which is that third one. Still in the spiritual. This is called the physical reality. Okay? Our physical world. And I'm going to explain what it means in a second. Again, there's these three worlds. This is starting, these are the bottom three circles on the map. First, God has this like idea. Let me create the world. There's this like creation type of thing going on in God's mind. We don't know what it is yet. And we're gonna have some examples soon, but just without getting into examples, just studying Kabbalah at face value. There's this Bria, there's this separate reality from God. Then there's something that's a little bit more formed, and then there's the creation. Let us see exactly how this works, the human creation. As we said, everything in us, in our lives, is just a mirror of how it is by God. So those three worlds that we discuss are like the embryo, the fetus, and then once the baby becomes much more formed, and then you could see the hair, you could see the eyelashes. It starts off just as, let's say, this concept. There's just like this beat, there's just like something there. We don't know what it is, if we can't see what it is yet. Then there's just some formation. We don't know even maybe, I don't know, maybe the doctors do know if it's male or female, but you cannot necessarily see its eyes and its hair and its fingernails and its fingers. There's just something there. There's no details yet. Then there's this much more fully created baby that's kicking in the stomach. And you can see the hair and you can see the eyes opening and closing or whatever you see it moving. These are those three bottom worlds that we just said. Bria is the embryo that start off. Then the second level is the fetus. Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, the three worlds that we just explained, is the way it is in a human being. Okay? Sure, 100%. Yeah, yes.
So you said the middle one's supposed to be this other first?
So it goes like this. Oh yes. Oh, okay. So over here, okay. So it's the one second, one second, one second, one second, one second. Actually, it's not there's 10 levels. There's 10 circles. If you count, there's 10 circles. The bottom circle, which is Malchut, which is the lowest one, is it's included within it. It's part basically we'll get to exactly what how it fits into this thing a little later. Yeah. So these are the three worlds. These let me clarify a little bit the map. Let me clarify the map. Let me I want to go back much. Let me go back even further. Let me go back even further. There are 10, a human being, the way it explains in Kabbalah, and the way it explains it says, I will go back a lot right now. There are 10 attributes. There are 10 I don't know another word for attributes. What? What? Yeah. I understand. Let me just there's yeah. So there's 10 parts of a person. There's three parts of our brain. There's three levels in how our Kabbalah explains there's three levels in how our brain works. There's the concept. First, there's like a flash. Then the second level is called Bina, which is more details to the concept. Then there's Das, which is taking that concept and those details and bringing it onto action. Then there are seven feelings and emotions. The seven feelings and emotions is what last week we saw on that map. There was seven feelings and emotions. The um, there was the emotion of kingship, of kindness, of stringency, of all the winning over. Um, there's seven. Okay, I don't remember all of them right now. So altogether becomes 10. That picture of the circles are those 10 attributes. In every single world, in this world of Bria, there's 10 attributes. In the world of Yitzira, there's 10 attributes. In the world of Asiya, there's 10 attributes. That map happens in each one of these three worlds. Okay, that just in short how that map fits into these three worlds. Each one of these three worlds include this whole map, but in each one of these worlds, a different part of that map is stronger than a different part. In other words, just to give you an example, in a human being, you could have a human being, a person, us, whereby us, the most powerful emotion and feeling and attribute that we have is kindness. Does that mean that we don't have any stringency within us? Of course you do, but what is a stronger attribute? Is the attribute of kindness. And in every human being, all these things mix together. For an example, in Kabbalah, in Hasidus, it explains that when you see a child, it brings an example of seeing a child holding a knife. Yeah, it's so dangerous. You run and grab the knife away. Did you just do, were you stringent just now, or were you kind? Both. You were stringent because you grabbed it away, you ran, get the knife, you scream. That's very strict. It's very like, wow, you're taking away, you're pulling away something from someone. But on the other hand, you're being kind because if you let the kid hold a knife, chances are he's going to hurt himself or someone else. So every single person has a mix of all these things, and in every single world has a mix of all these things. And in some worlds, each part is stronger than the other. Each levels are stronger than the other. And our souls, by the way, just as a side note, go through this whole entire map. And wherever our soul happens to reside longer, or wherever our soul happens to receive more energy from, that's a type of soul we have. Just a side note. Okay, now a little bit further, we're going to go into this concept for a minute. Okay, this should be interesting. Okay, one second. But before we get to this, what's on the board? There is, let's look at page number 10, where it says key term number 1.3. I want to discuss something for a second. Where we 1.2. 1.2 is not it's basically these four worlds, the first letter of each world creating a word. Um, okay. Now, why do these worlds exist? Why did God create the world in a way that we have these three levels? This let's call it evolution for now, because it's just a word that we know. Why did he create this chain? Why did he create these three worlds? Why did we need these three worlds in order to have our world? So as I was explaining a little earlier, that going from spirituality to physicality is a very big jump. We need some type of thing in between. What is that thing in between? These three worlds. Right? These three worlds are this in between the physical and the spiritual. In order to have the spiritual, the physical, there has to be this slow progress the way it is by a human being. What happens, and this is key term number 1.3. There's a concept in Kabbalah called Yashut, which means existence. An existence outside of godliness. Well, there was only spirituality. Then there comes existence. In Kabbalah, this existence is called Yeshut. Yeshut is an existence with a sense of self-awareness and independence. An angel, for example, is not considered really so much an existence like us. An angel, for example, is like in middle of this evolution, in middle. It's not a physical being, but it's not either a part of God where it doesn't feel itself. It's just like floating over there. They're just like this in between stage. And these three worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, these three worlds of creation, formation, and existence are this is this in between spirituality and physicality. Go slowly, slowly coming down into this world. Okay, let's see. Um, Everybody on page number 11, just to go over this quickly. On page number 11, where it has that figure number 1.4. So first, you have Bria, which is translated as a created being. This is the initial appearance of a novel entity. They just disappear, like the Adam and fetus. Then is Yitzira, it's the shape, supplying form to the pre-existing entity. Asiya, the made, the completion of of an entity's production. Yeah. Now, what is these pictures over here? So here, I'm going to go into this for a minute. Children, a baby, a child, and a teenager. Each one of these stages in life has an entire different way of connection to their parents. What do I mean? The baby, the first level, this is the way God is in the first level of Bria. There is a, a baby. But God, the parents, are entirely consumed with the child. A newborn baby, the child is always in one of the parents' hands, and if it's not, it's almost going to be. The baby is completely reliant on the mother for food, not for nursing bottles, but either way, completely, the baby is completely reliant on the parents for survival. If the parents, God forbid, leave the child for 24 hours, the baby, a newborn, who knows what could happen? The baby's entire existence cannot be for a moment. And even if it could be, it isn't for a moment without the parents. It's an existence. It's there. There's a child, there's a baby, but the entire time the parents are hovering the baby. The entire time the parents, there is no yesha, there is no existence of the baby outside of the parents. There's no really the baby child is aware that it's alive. The child's aware of its existence, but it doesn't exist outside of the parents' um, wants and control. Not in a bad way, but that's just the way it is. It's totally consumed by the parent. Then you have a child. They're living at home, but now the kid goes to school. He goes to overnight camp. He goes to stay in a kid's house, in a friend's house. He's starting to create some identity, not an identity without the parents. He still comes home. His parents are still buying him food and buying him clothes and giving him a house to live in and giving him a bed and paying for his education. The child is still under the tutelage of the parents, but a little bit to the side. Then comes the teenager. The teenager is completely removed from the parents. So much so, there is what is known as teenagers quite literally usually rebel against their parents. They become so independent. They become so separated, or they want to be so separated from their parents. They're like, oh, I don't want to, my parents are too old, they're old school. I'm cool with the guys, I'm going to go do this. And they rebel against their parents. They're totally separated from the parents. It's just how teenagers work. Eventually, it re-circles maybe back to the child a little bit where hopefully the teenager we can comes back, but the teenager and the parents usually be parents if it's parents allow, let's say like this, the parents allow for the teenagers to have their independence, to feel that they have their existence outside of themselves. And that's the way it works in the world. Starts off slowly, this progression, this it progresses slowly of godliness, completely consumed with the world, with the first world. but it's there, it exists, but it's totally dependent and consumed and surrounded by spirituality. Then it goes down a level, there's some form, there's some independence. Then, by the time it gets down into this world, it's already separate. Now, important. As we said a little earlier, it's important to know that Kabbalah cannot be taken literal. And this is a perfect example because it happens to be that the level of the baby is the best level. We say that what do we want for our children? We want them to be independent, not living in our house, not living in our basement, get, not being with it. Obviously, we want them with us the whole time, but separate. Opposite is true with godliness. We actually want to be totally consumed with spirituality. We totally want to. And it's actually supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be totally consumed with spirituality to a degree and good things and the study of Torah and doing mitzvot and connecting to God. Not, God forbid, separating ourselves from God, not rebelling against God, not like leaving the home. So this is where this example doesn't necessarily fit exactly because of our intentions, but this is the way God created the world. This is how it worked. There was this spirituality together with the separated world. Then it moved away a little bit, and then it moved away even more. Okay, we're almost done. I'm gonna play a video in a minute. Next, let's go a little further along here. These are the three worlds. See a reality. Let's see here. So here is this real reality, which is the higher level, being overwhelmed by his presence. The Yitzhak reality, sensing God's presence. The Asiya reality, God feels somewhat distant from us. This is how it is in our mind. Now let's see this in text number 5. There are text number 5, which is on page number 12. There are 3 rungs: Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Bria is the first introduction of Yeshut, an independent self-concept. However, existence only develops into a complete yash and then a complete existence once it reaches the third stage. The reason yashut, which means existence, develops gradually is because the initial stage of existence remains close to God and his presence is very much sensed at this level. Then Bria devolves into Yetzirah, where the presence of God is somewhat concealed. Finally, Yetzirah devolves into Asiya, where God is completely concealed. At this point, existence becomes a true yesh, a true existence, and gains a complete sense of selfhood. Like we said, the example of the teenagers where he has this complete sense of selfhood. I want to go to key term number 1.4. This is a very important concept in Kabbalah and in Hasidic philosophy even more. The concept of bittul. What does bittul mean? Bittul. Yeah. 1.4, page 13. The literal meaning is surrender, a subdued sense of self due to being absorbed by something overwhelmingly impressive and the desire to become one with it. And here is a very important concept, which I'm going to go on for a minute and then I'm going to play a video. Although we are in the lowest stage of spiritual reality, where we feel our own self, where spirituality and godliness is concealed within this world. We don't see it around us. We can think it, we can meditate, we can feel it. Kabbalah and the teachings of Kabbalah are supposed to bring us to this level of bittul, of surrender. It's not supposed to be like this an entire day, but a sense of a feeling that I am totally consumed in godliness. I don't exist. We exist, but I don't exist. An example, I don't need that donut today. I don't need to do this and this today. Let me do something more spiritual today. Let me surrender a little bit of my desire, my physical desires and needs and wants to God. Let me create a spiritual path and journey within myself. Not fully. You're not supposed to be in this key term number 1.3 of bittul, of complete surrender to God at all times. We're supposed to be down here in this world and interact with this world and be together with other people. But it's very important that there's times that we have this concept called bittul, where our physical lives and our physical desires and wants or needs, we move to the side and we surrender our self to God for a few minutes. Prayer. Pray. Pray for a few minutes a day. Surrender yourself to God for a few minutes a day. And that is the entire purpose of the study of Kabbalah. That there should be times that we allow ourselves to be consumed with godliness and spirituality. I'm going to play a video which is going to, someone who's going to take all of these things that we just spoke today and elaborate it at length and say it much better than I do. Yes, sure.
Like aiming for yourself?
Yes, to make yourself smaller. To make yourself, yes, to make yourself smaller. Exactly, 100%. Okay, so I put in here a video from YouTube. Oh, here it is. Perfect. It's here. It was going to show up. Let's see if it works.
What is the Kabbalah? It's Judaism's mystical wisdom.
Yeah.
It discusses souls, the deeper meaning of things, and the spirit
Making a better quality. 1 second.
and the spiritual system of the heavens. Never heard of this heavenly system? That's okay. Why don't we do what Kabbalah
Let me go back a little so it's clear. It's like very choppy.
It discusses souls, the deeper meaning of things, and the spiritual system of the heavens. Never heard of this heavenly system? That's okay. Why don't we do what Kabbalah does best? Offer a parable to explain something abstract. You decide to build a home. Your plan actually begins with an intuition of pleasure. Deep within your subconscious, you sense the enormous pleasure of dwelling in a home that truly suits you. That spark of pleasure that invades your brain's desire center. I want a home, you tell yourself. Immediately, your intellect grabs the wheel. You logically justify your desire and analyze the possibilities. Your emotions chime in. How do I feel about this location? Am I comfortable with high windows? You carefully rethink your plan, you discuss it with friends, and are finally ready for action. Sign, build, move. What's all that got to do with heaven? The Kabbalah reveals that when God decided to create the physical world, God first created an entire spiritual system that parallels the experience we've just described. In this first video, we'll take a quick look at the final 3 stages of this system. In each subsequent video, we will climb one level higher as we explore this supernal chain of command. The mystical work titled The Zohar discusses the existence of 3 spiritual worlds that precede our own. Their names are Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. These worlds are inhabited by angels and souls before they descend to earth, and those who have passed away and flourish in the afterlife. In Hebrew, the word beria means to create something from nothing at all. So, in the spiritual world of beria, for the first time in the entire system, things exist that are aware of their own existence. They feel independent, outside of God. That's amazing, because nothing is independent of God. But in Berea, God hides His presence to enable entities to emerge with a sense of self. Nevertheless, the angels and souls that inhabit Berea feel tremendously close to God and are completely focused on God. Everything here is fragile, extremely close to losing its identity and being blissfully overwhelmed by proximity to God. So, God took it one step further and created the spiritual world of Yetzirah, which means to give shape to something. This is where the sense of independence from God truly begins to take shape. Here, God hides His presence to a far greater degree, which allows the spiritual inhabitants of Yetzirah to develop greater self-awareness. That said, God is still sensed in the spiritual place. And so, God made Asiya, which in Hebrew implies a complete and final product. From its perspective, the sense of independence from God is complete. Asiya has two linked layers. Its top layer consists of spiritual beings, and in its lower layer is our physical universe, the tangible, material world we know so well, where we struggle to relate to the divine force that continuously creates us. The good news? Even as we reside in the physical Asiya, our souls keep a connection with those higher worlds from which they emanate. The spiritual Asiya helps us peer beyond the physical. Yetzirah empowers us to suspend our self-focus long enough to sense God's presence. And Berea helps us feel blissfully overwhelmed by God's presence, at least momentarily, such as in a moment of meditative prayer. So, we walk planet Earth, but at the same time, we can be firmly rooted in the bliss of spiritual loftiness.
Thus, we will conclude tonight's class.